Hey guys, so World Championships are over, so I thought I'd do a quick video about some of my thoughts about the event. I'm not going to mess around with an intro, so let's just get into it. So one of the big things launched by the FIE was FencingTV, a new platform where they stream the competition. In principle, this sounds like a good idea to me. The FIE really needs to up its game in terms of commoditizing the sport. Currently, the Federation has absolutely zero commercial partners, which leaves the organisation almost entirely reliant on handouts from the IOC. I could see that by having its own platform, they could potentially better manage any ad space, which any potential sponsors would want, although that's assuming any companies would want to associate themselves with the FIE given their current reputation. FencingTV wasn't perfect, but it did the job. A nice new feature was that commentary was available in multiple languages, which I think is really important given how widely spread around the world fencing is. The non-English commentators didn't seem to actually be present at the event, they just seemed to have some sort of Zoom link set up or whatever, which I think is absolutely fine and actually could be a smart way of saving money. The English commentary was
I prefer really not to speak. If I speak, I am in big trouble.
One positive is that this year the FIE have been posting some better stuff on their social media, particularly on Instagram. It's a lot less sterile than previous years, which I think is a really nice change. Just weeks before the event, the FIE released a letter making a few big announcements. One of these was the reintroduction of prize money. Now, this isn't new as a concept. In fact, even Junior World Championships have had prize pools in the past. But the interesting thing is that in the past, this money has come explicitly from Alisher Usmanov or his charitable foundation. This is the billionaire president of the FIE. This money has been missing in recent years, seemingly because of the sanctions that were placed on Usmanov, which can limit how he splashes his money. So this year, the money must be coming from the FIE's own budget. Additionally, the FIE announced that they will pay the entry fees for a substantial number of offences, which sounds like another pretty significant increase in spending. Maybe this is all money that has just come from the Olympics from last year. I'm not exactly an accountant, but the FIE budgets are all online, so you can have a look for yourself to see how all this adds up. These big announcements were also wrapped up with a more controversial decision, which was to basically remove or greatly reduce the neutrality requirements for Russian fencers. This basically meant that Russian fencers who are affiliated with the Russian armed forces, even those holding a military rank, have been allowed to compete as independent neutral athletes. This includes both Yana Igorian and Sofia Velikaya, who have both acted as proxies for Vladimir Putin in his previous presidential elections. The FIE has also allowed Russians to compete in teams of individual neutral athletes, which not only flies in the face of logic, but also clearly goes against the IOC guidelines. However, the fact that the FIE is spearheading the return of Russian military athletes into international sport becomes less of a surprise when you remember that the elected president of the FIE is a sanctioned Russian-Uzbek billionaire with reported links to Vladimir Putin. Now, if you followed any news about Georgia in the last couple of years, you should be aware that many Georgians are unhappy with the ever-increasing influence of Russia in their politics. Massive protests have been fairly common in recent years, so it really should come as to no surprise when Georgians decided to protest outside the fencing venue at the World Championships, which for some time period even prevented spectators from entering or leaving the venue. The presence of these Russian armed forces athletes clearly resulted in some tensions. One of the most watched matches in the women's sabre was the defeat of Putin supporting Sofia Velikaya to Ukrainian Bakastova in the preliminary rounds of the women's sabre event. And when Alina Komashchuk won bronze medal, she refused to pose for pictures on the podium, as she would have to share it with Yana Igorian, the Russian. The return of the Russians in team events has also caused a bit of chaos in the team events. Since they are practically unseeded, it means that some top teams were faced with a very tough first match. For example, Iran, who came fourth last year in Paris, were knocked out by Russia in the last 32 of the event, which was a very unlucky draw for them. Now, inevitably, there will be people in the comments moaning about me bringing politics into sport. If you happen to be one of the empty heads about to type something along those lines, please just ask yourself why the Georgian President, Prime Minister and Minister for Sport were all present to watch Sandro Bazadze fight his way to the gold medal. So that brings me to Bazadze, the main character of this event really. His dad, Merab Bazadze, the president of the Georgian Fencing Federation, will have had a big role in organising this event. So there will have been a lot of pressure on his shoulders, particularly after his dramatic meltdown in Paris last year. In some ways, it's an inspiring story. After years of missing out of the major championships, the hometown hero finally gets his glory. I'm sure there will be a lot of young Georgian fencers in the crowd who will have been massively inspired by this, so there are positives, but to be honest, having watched a few of his matches, I find it all to be a bit meh. Refereeing is inconsistent for everyone, but there were just one too many odd calls going in his favour for me to really get excited about it. His increasingly abrasive character on the piste is also quite off-putting, especially given that by all accounts of the piste, he is a very pleasant person. Maybe it's unfair to single out Sandro for these problems because over-the-top screaming isn't something that is unique to him, but the one thing that I do find frustrating to watch is the games he seems to be playing on the on-guard lines. It felt like every Bazadze match took longer than the others because he spends so much time messing around before he finally comes on guard. This gives him a pretty huge advantage, I think, because it basically lets him choose when the ref gives the start command. The ref waits so long for him to get on guard, so immediately after he finally becomes stationary, the ref says "Prêt, allez." And I feel like it's such an unfair advantage, leaving the other fencer waiting on the on guard line for long periods of uncertainty. Whereas Sandro knows that as soon as he comes on guard, the ref will say go. Maybe this isn't a deliberate thing, but I think referees really need to be mindful of this. It's a small thing, but it can have a huge impact on the match. If fencers aren't getting on guard in a reasonable amount of time, cards need to start coming out. So yeah, I hate to be the guy who just moans. There is still plenty of really good fencing. I am still always in awe of the skill that is displayed at these events, and the sport is in a really exciting place in some ways, where on the second day pretty much anyone is capable of beating anyone. I think Hesham of Egypt making a medal might be one of those surprise results for many people, but I think if you've watched him fence this season, then you wouldn't be so surprised. This is just how it is right now, like anyone can beat anyone. The other big story is the failure of the Koreans to medal in the men's sabre. Even if the Korean women are picking up a lot of the slack, I think at this point we can finally say that this is the end of an era. For the first time since 2016, Korea have not ended the season as number one in men's team sabre. Maybe if O comes back they can rebuild something in time for LA 2028, but at this rate they might not even be number one in Asia, as Japan are rapidly catching up. So yeah, that's a little overview. So far the FIE still hasn't realised that it might be a good idea to cut and upload individual matches. So at least for the moment, if you want to rewatch anything, you have to head over to FencingTV. I'll leave a little compilation of some cool points here, but thanks for watching. I'll see you. Bye.
Here's the hop. Parry, Rook.